air was full of last night's cigarette smoke and whiskey when I strode into the store. I surveyed the racks and made my way to the back. I knew that's where they'd be. Sure enough, when I looked round, there they were. 3 dames. Beautiful, but deadly. And the girl in black, she said,
"Roll the titles, big boy."
So I did.
Welcome to Uncovered. In today's episode, we're looking at the world of retro rock and roll.
So, we've been checking out some of the best things to do to be part of the retro movement here in Exeter.
Whether it's the roaring 20s, the swinging 60s, the wartime spirit, or 50s florals, there is so much to do and see in Exeter, even on a student budget.
And that's really good because vintage and retro clothing have become pretty fashionable in recent years, especially among people our age.
Basically, we just like an excuse to dress up.
So true. So, to kick things off, I went to the vintage fair on campus.
I think it's been going since 2011, so for a couple of years now. Yeah.
Do you find that it's really popular with students?
Oh, definitely, yeah. The students really enjoy coming along to the fairs and they're always asking when the next event is.
Do you think vintage is something that will stick around, or is it just a bit of a fad?
Well, I think it kind of comes and goes. I know this is, in the last few years, this is the second time it's been around, and it's so popular with the young people that I think things kind of come in and out, and styles definitely change with vintage. Like now, industrial vintage is quite popular. So I think along the lines of clinical, dentist equipment, think of old IKEA, kind of, but new.
Okay.
It's a bit hard to explain, really. But yeah, it's a really interesting phase that people are starting to really enjoy now.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. It's been really interesting. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to go and have a wander around.
I'm just passing through really, and it seems really nice. I came here last time and bought a couple of things, so just wanted to stop by. Well, I was looking at this, but I don't know how much it costs, so I'll see.
Let's see the jacket over there, this one here.
Yeah.
And there's a top over there.
Really 80s.
Really 80s. 80s?
80s, yeah.
Yeah,
Vintage.
and-
I like floral.
And
I like the floral. That. She's going to buy that.
look at the back.
Yeah.
I bought carousel necklace.
Oh, that's so cute.
I quite like, especially like the birdcage ones, like you see them in Camden Town a lot.
Yeah.
What is it about vintage that you love?
Probably the fact that you can get really individual pieces, and like as opposed to like especially like when it's high street, you're not quite sure where it's come from and some of the ethics behind it. So there's that nice kind of reusing.
I use sort of mixed medium, so mixed items, so crystals, beads, charms. I actually started as a fashion photographer, and then I sort of basically decided that I missed making as well as just sort of shooting the stuff, so I spent a lot of time trying it and started collecting pieces and different things and making. So I've had this label for about 5 years now. I like the mixture, the juxtaposition of vintage with new, so I use some vintage beads and vintage inspired sort of look with new items and found items. So I like creating something that looks timeless, which I guess you can do with vintage and with new items too.
It's probably good I left when I did. There were so many lovely things. I don't think my wallet could have taken it.
I know what you mean. I'm getting very attached to this dress right now.
Me too. Unfortunately, we have to return them. The Real McCoy on 4th Street has let us dress up for the day. I really feel like we belong in a film or something.
Luckily, shopping isn't the only thing you can do to get involved with the vintage spirit. Recently, Exeter Swing Society affiliated with the Students' Guild, and I got to go along and have a taste of their weekly Lindy Hop sessions. At 8 o'clock on a Thursday night, the deepest, darkest corners of St Luke's campus come alive to the sound of swing. We are now in the lovely dance studio with Jane and Derek, who are the Southwest Lindy Hoppers. For us complete novices out there, what is Lindy hopping?
It's a fun dance. It's the original swing dance from the 1930s and 40s. And from Savoy-style Lindy Hop came rock and roll and modern jive. Savoy-style Lindy Hop started at the Savoy Ballroom, Harlem, New York. And it was a place where black Americans and white Americans could dance together in the 1920s and 30s, and where black and white musicians could also play together, which was most unusual for the time.
Bring it forward to the 21st century. When did your classes start?
Oh, about 7 years ago. We started just doing like practice sessions with friends, and then eventually people were asking us questions all the time, you know, how can they do this, how can they do that? So we thought, well, we might as well start teaching.
Jane and Derek kindly volunteered to teach me the basics. Fantastic, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for this. First off, the boogie back.
Boogie back, 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 boogie back.
You're doing an interesting thing with your foot there. What are you doing with your foot
I'm doing
there?
a kickball change.
Oh, it's just a kickball change. Kickball change.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Even better, yeah.
Next up, the Shorty George. Shorty George was a famously short Lindy Hopper who exaggerated his walk for comic effect. Not gonna lie, I had a bit more trouble with this one. I'll practice that one. I'll be good by the end of the night. Then something I found a little easier, a move called Around the World.
I'm going to bring you around, all the way around to my right hand side.
Seems simple enough.
Just try that for a second.
Okay, I can do walking. That's yeah.
This is known as an open position.
Okay.
You don't break away. This is known as open. So what I'm going to do is you keep your eye on me, all the way around, and we're going to end up there.
Jane showed me how to change it up.
And smiling.
And then it was my turn.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes.
Did I impress?
Yes.
Fantastic, I strutted my stuff. Time to join the rest of the class. What is it that drew you to Lindy Hop?
Well, dancing is a lot of fun, and Lindy Hop is great. You just smile the whole way through.
Have you done dancing before?
I did salsa for a couple of years.
How different is Lindy Hop from salsa?
Salsa can get a little bit close and a bit sleazy. I didn't really like it that much, but Lindy Hop's a lot more fun.
That was fun.
Light-hearted.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
The class is a mixed ability, so everyone learns from dancing with each other, and you don't have to bring a partner. Both students and members of the community attend the classes, and it's certainly a fun way to spend your Thursday evening.
That looked like so much fun.
It really was, and it's pretty easy to pick up the basics, so I looked a lot more impressive than I actually was.
Speaking of impressive, this building is incredible. There's just so much here. I definitely need to go and explore.
Might want to get changed first.
Good point. I'm here with Roberta, the ground floor manager here at the Real McCoy. Roberta's been really helping us out today, getting all our garb on. And Roberta, would you be able to tell us anything about the history of this shop?
It started in 1984, so it's 30 years old this year. And it started actually across the road as Bumblebee's Bazaar, a really small shop. And since then it's just grown. One thing that I haven't found in a lot of high street shops is a real kind of atmosphere, and my favourite day of the week here is a Saturday when I play the music too loud and it's full of people and everyone's having fun dressing up, and even if they end up not buying anything, it's nice that they know that they can come back and spend some time here and get a proper hands-on shopping experience.
Roberta gave us a quick tour of her favourite pieces.
Modern, going into the 80s, which probably isn't my favourite. I just don't really like it that much, but then there's the 60s and it's redeemed.
The Real McCoy spans 2 floors of the McCoy Arcade in 4th Street and provides a combination of vintage and reproduction items from the 1920s right up to the 1990s.
or 50s. That's another favourite of mine, though I don't think I tend to wear 50s all that much, so I just like it from afar. Actually, this is my favourite dress. These barbers are never in here long. That's something that we students really know that we have, because whenever they come in, they're asking for barbers, but they're always too popular. One thing you'll find here is that there's lots of little nooks and crannies that you can kind of look around and rummage through.
After having a good rummage around, I went to check out what the rest of 4th Street had to offer. Across from the Real McCoy are a wealth of independent shops, all buying into the vintage ideal, so I went to have a chat with some of the shop owners. First stop, Relevant Retro, where I spoke to Willow. Willow, why is it that you're in this vintage business?
I think the quality of the clothing, I mean, you look at the quality on the high street now versus the quality of 50, 60 years ago. The dresses are still around and the fabrics are better made and everything's tailored nicely, and you don't find that on the high street.
Would you say there's any pieces that are most popular among students?
Well, it totally depends what the fashion is. At the moment it's all 20s Gatsby, so anything with beads and anything a little bit shiny really flies off the rail. But without my student customer base, at the moment, anything 40s orientated bestseller, it has been through and through for years. I'm really, really into 1940s white tea dresses because they're quite hard to find. So this is 1940s white dress, so I'm guessing it would have been worn as a wedding dress, but it could just be also worn as a day dress, and it's just pure silk. And I like the label the most because it says Glasgow and it's quite a neat and tidy label. A lot of them don't have labels because they were homemade. People would buy a dress, so one dress from a shop, and then get their tailor or their seamstress to make it times 20. So a lot of them don't have labels and they're all handmade. So that's one of my favourite at the moment.
Do you think vintage is going to stick around forever?
No.
No.
This will be, we're in the last generation of vintage. When we're old and grey, there won't be stuff that we grew up in won't necessarily be vintage. So stuff from kind of 90s, or I'd say 80s, but not everyone agrees with me. I think that 90s onwards, so 90s to now, won't ever be vintage.
Right.
It will never have 50s years worth because it will never survive because the quality isn't there. The 20s is about to hit 100 years, which is incredible, but once it hits 100 years, it's an antique. So kind of, I think when we're old, there'll be pieces, but not as much as there is now. So now really is the time to buy it and enjoy it because it'll all disappear sooner or later.
Well, that's my wardrobe sorted for the year. For our next stop, we're looking at how vintage isn't just about clothes. Arts and crafts are a big part of vintage, and in true make-do and men's spirit, Ariettis is the perfect opportunity to stock up on some supplies if you're looking to do vintage on a student budget. As well as selling a variety of beautiful handcrafted items, Ariettis also provides workshops so that you can learn your own skills, such as dressmaking, sewing and crochet. Sounds awesome. This way now. For our final stop, we visited a gem right at the bottom of 4th Street. I'm here enjoying some tea with Vicky here at the Hidden Treasure Tea Rooms. Vicky, could you tell us how you came to open this shop?
Prior to this, I was a singer and a singing teacher, and there was a big vintage revival going on. I could see it in London where I was living, and when I came back to Exeter, it was even clearer. You know, there was masses of vintage fairs going on and vintage events and people walking around in all the clothes. I came to see a tea room and I just thought, there's a gap in the market there, so that's why I did it really. I really like cake.
And what is it about vintage that attracts you?
I really like old stuff. I think that probably sounds like a funny statement, but as a kid I always liked shopping in charity shops and getting second-hand things, and I always felt there's more interesting stuff to be found in there than on the high street. I like the idea of giving things a second life, of retrieving things that might otherwise go into landfill or end up in a box somewhere, and vintage really fits with all of that.
So there we have it, a vintage tour of Exeter. I've really enjoyed myself, and I'm pretty sure that others are happy amusing themselves back at the Real McCoy. So until next time, here on Exeter Uncovered, I'm going to enjoy a well-earned cuppa and maybe uncover another of those scones.